So if you guys have a Low Rider S or Low Rider ST, I'm going to show you some of the upgrades and changes I've made to my 2023 Low Rider ST, in case you're in the market for some of the upgrades and want to see what they look like on the bike first and kind of get somebody's opinion on how it performs, if it's worth the money. Because let's be honest, anything motorcycle related, especially with Harley-Davidson, is not cheap.
Shut up and take my money.
So it's definitely something that you want to do some research for before just diving in and buying anything with these bikes. So like I said, I've had this bike for a little over a year now. And honestly, from the factory, these things are set up very well. If you don't want to spend a lot of money on upgrades initially, you really don't have to. Unless you want to ride a passenger, then you have to kind of deal with that. But if it's just you on the bike, this thing is pretty much ready to go from the factory, except for the exhaust, which we all know, but that's a whole Harley thing. Their exhausts sound like crap, so usually that's the first thing people go with. So I'm gonna go with just kind of where I went with this bike and what I've done to it so far. Nothing too crazy, like I said, but one of the first things I did, just like everybody else, is I dealt with the exhaust. So as far as this bike goes, I do like the 2-into-2 exhaust right here. I know a lot of people go with the 2-into-1 full exhaust setups, and that's totally fine. I don't mind the look of those as well, and they sound amazing. But I wanted to stay with this 2-into-2 look, and again, I didn't want to spend a whole lot of money. I was kind of obviously keeping budget in mind because there were a bunch of things I wanted to do initially, but didn't want to spend too much money in one area. So with the exhaust, I just went ahead and changed out the mufflers. So I put slip-on mufflers, and these are the Cobra RTP mufflers. And the cool thing about these are, you know, since I am running a passenger, I don't want a super loud exhaust, and I do take this bike on longer trips, so I'm on it quite a bit, and a loud exhaust, as awesome as it sounds, does kind of tend to hurt your ears a little bit, especially if you're not wearing earplugs. And on my last bike, I did have the Reinhardt slip-ons, and those were super loud, almost too loud. So I knew I didn't want to go anything that crazy loud, and Cobra makes two different kinds. They make these and the Neighbor Haters, which are definitely louder, but these I actually heard at a dealership before I bought them on a street bob or something like that, and they sound good. They definitely sound louder than the stock ones and a lot better, more of that Harley sound, but they're not overly aggressive. So if you're somebody that wants a louder, more aggressive sound, but nothing too overly loud, definitely these Cobra slip-ons you might check out. I think they're around 500 bucks, give or take, and they're super easy to install yourself. One thing to keep in mind, if you are just doing the muffler slip-ons, you will need to purchase a separate gasket for these. They're like 7 bucks. I just got mine at the Harley dealership. I'll post a picture here if I can. But other than that, just some simple tools in your garage, you can change those mufflers out, and they are a night and day difference. But as far as that goes, that's personal preference. Again, I like the 2-into-2 look, and especially with these bags, how this is shorter on this side. Because of that, I don't have to change the bags or, you know, see that offset a little bit more than what it already is. So that's why I went with the Cobra RTP slip-ons, and it is the black to kind of match the stock exhaust up here. So of course, after that, the next thing I moved on to was the windshield or windscreen. Because for me, I'm 5'10", and the stock one was too short. I was getting a ton of buffeting in my helmet, and it was basically just hitting me right in the face. So I've gone through quite a few different windshields and tested a bunch of different ones out and landed on this one, which is the Clearview Large. I've also tried out the Clearview Medium, their extra large, And I also tried out and still have the Clockworks 10-inch. And out of all of those, I ended up going with the Clearview Large because it fit well for me. I will say the Clearview 10-inch is really good as well. It is darker in tint than one I have, and it is thinner, so it doesn't cover the sides quite as much. So you're definitely going to get more wind on you with the Clockworks over the Clearview. Now the Clockworks is going to be really good this time of year because you're going to get more of that airflow on your body to keep you cool. Whereas if you do ride in winter months, maybe the Clearview, since you get a little bit more coverage, might be the better way to go. Either way, they all install the same. And the cool thing about Clearview though is you can actually test out their windshields before you commit to it, as long as you keep the film on. So you can still go take it out for a ride, and then if you realize, oh, I needed this one up or the one below, you can easily change that out and get the right one for you. Just make sure to keep that film on. And I do have several videos on that you can check out on the windshield itself, but I went, like I said, with the Clearview Large. So moving on to the seat. Now the stock seat isn't terrible. You can get away with that for a little while, but that foam does get uncomfortable, especially on the longer rides. And again, you can't have a passenger with that seat. So I ended up going with the Saddlemen Explorer seat in all black, as you can see. And the main reason I went with that is for the passenger comfort. This over the step up has a skinnier area for the passenger, not as much surface area. So doing some research on that, a lot of people did complain and end up changing out their seats to something different. So I just went ahead and bit the bullet on this one. And my wife has ridden on the back of it and has had no complaints. Usually we're out riding anywhere from 45 minutes to maybe 2 hours at a time, and she does not complain about the comfort, especially with this seat. So the Explorer seat has definitely been a good passenger experience. And then for my experience as the rider, it is definitely a night and day difference as well. It's a lot more comfortable than the stock seat. It does raise you up a little bit higher, so you will notice that, and I did notice that with this windshield. With the stock seat, the Large from Clearview was perfect, but now that I'm up a little bit more, I'm a little bit higher than I would like to be on this windshield, but not that big of a deal. It still blocks plenty of wind and everything like that. So I would say probably about gave me an inch or so of rise in the seat, and it is definitely noticeable and definitely a wider area that you're sitting on too. And it is nice having this backrest, especially if you have the pulled back bars. You can lean back a little bit further and use that for some support. But definitely an upgrade over the stock seat. And again, from my wife's experience on the back, it is definitely really good for the passenger. So Saddlemen does have awesome customer service and warranties in case you're worried about that. So I highly recommend, if you're doing any sort of two-up riding, to check out the Saddlemen Explorer seat. And to go along with that, so she had something to rest her back on, I just went with the Harley-Davidson branded Sissy bar. It is detachable, so if I want to take this off, I can, but I pretty much just keep this on all the time. And even though it's shorter than the one I had on my Sportster, she doesn't complain about, you know, feeling like she's gonna fall off. It still keeps her on the bike. She does hold on to me a little bit if we get on the throttle, but she hasn't made any complaints about this being too short. So the only thing I wish it was a little bit taller, just so you could put a helmet on there a little bit easier. But the stock one from Harley isn't bad, and again, it's detachable, so if you don't want to run it all the time, you can easily take it off. And then for the passenger pegs, I went with just the standard Harley-Davidson ones. They're the same ones that come on the front here of the stock bike, so I just wanted them to match, and she didn't care about floorboards or anything like that. She's like, just give me whatever's up front. So I went with the Harley branded passenger pegs, and they're nice because if you're not running the passenger, they just flip up just like that. So as far as the lighting, I haven't changed much as far as the lighting, especially since it does come with an LED headlight. Not the brightest, but better than those incandescent bulbs that they all used to come with, especially that I had on my Sportster. So the only thing I changed lighting wise goes so far is the front turn signals. I went with the Rogue Rider Industry LED lights. I had those on my Sportster, so I just took them off my Sportster and threw them on here, and they fit just fine. I am going to place the ones on the back too. I just have to order those, so I'm just going to get the matching set on the back. And with these, I think that's the light smoke caps on there. So definitely a good upgrade to have for lighting, because you definitely want to be seen at night. And those aren't too overly expensive. I think for the pair, they're right around 90 bucks, give or take as well. The front turn signal ones do help, since they are kind of running lights at night as well, with a little bit more extra to assist with that LED headlight up there. And then once I get the ones in the back, super easy to change out. Definitely get rid of those amber color covers and make it look a little bit better and kind of match everything as well. Now for crash protection or safety, I just went with the Harley-Davidson Mustache Engine Guard. nothing crazy there. I had a similar one on my Sportster and like that look of the mustache one. So it does set up for if you want to use that as highway pegs too. But unfortunately with this breather on here, you really can't use it on this side unless you get like an extension or something like that. But having an engine guard on your bike is definitely a nice peace of mind in case anything were to happen. It is going to protect some of these important components up here. Again, everything on Harley-Davidsons are expensive, so if you do end up dropping your bike or it tipping over in a parking lot like this, you do have some sort of protection kind of covering the most expensive parts on here. So apparently I picked the busiest parking lot to do this in. Anyway, but as far as the engine goes, the 117 stock is enough power for me. It feels really good, plenty of torque. I don't have any problem passing people on the highway if I need to, getting up the speed really fast. So for me, I'm not gonna really change too much with the engine anytime soon. But the one thing I did do is get the Screamin' Eagle Bluetooth tuner, and if you're doing just slip-ons like I did, I would not recommend it because it really doesn't change much. I thought it would change a little bit, and maybe it did, but I don't have a way to dyno this thing to see if it does. The only dyno place is the Harley dealership, and they charge a lot of money for that. But just riding around, I did a couple like custom tunes just to see if it would change, and I didn't notice anything significant. So if you're just doing slip-ons, I probably wouldn't spend the money on the Screamin' Eagle tuner because it is like 500 bucks or so. And once you have it for this bike, you can't sell it and recoup any of that money. It basically stays with this bike. And of course, with Harley-Davidson, even the Screamin' Eagle stuff, they do have to stick with the EPA standards. So you're not going to get the best performance out of that. So that's probably the one upgrade or modification that I regret. But if I end up doing a full exhaust, maybe stage one, maybe it'll make a difference at that point a little bit, but for just the slip-ons, I would definitely stay away from doing any sort of tuning if you can, unless you do a full stage one. All right, I gotta start wrapping this up because apparently there's a softball game going on and the parking lot is filling up like crazy. So moving on to the handlebars, really the only thing I've done here is just an Amazon branded phone mount. This thing works good for the price. Haven't had any issues with it messing up my phone or anything like that. And I always keep the phone here. So no issues with that. Just a mount here for my GoPro. And I do have a handlebar bag here. It's another Amazon brand, but this is Kemimoto, and this is pretty comparable to the Thrash and Supply one, just at a much lower cost. And what I like about it is the inside is orange, so definitely can see everything that is in here. So plenty of room for like my wallet. If I do throw my phone in here, it goes in there. So a little bit of extra storage. And then the top one right here, I just keep a pair of sunglasses in here, and it just Velcros to the handlebars here. And then at the bottom, this thing is not waterproof, but I try not to ride in the rain a whole lot if I can avoid it. But it still would be good enough to keep your stuff from getting too wet, but definitely not fully waterproof. And if I wash the bike, I just easily take that off and then put it back on once I'm done. One other thing I did down here is installed the Harley branded air deflector. It basically just keeps some of the air going up in between your legs here, and it's supposed to kind of just got it back down here to the cylinder and just keep it cooler. It helps a little bit, not a whole lot of difference that I can tell, but just something a little bit of extra, anything to keep that heat off of you, I'm gonna try. So there's Advent Black that makes one that actually matches like the paint, so it'd come in this glossy color, but these are the ones from Harley-Davidson, not too bad. Definitely helps a little bit, but again, not a significant difference. So they are not the cheapest thing for just being a piece of plastic and a screw, but something to consider if you're looking for getting rid of some of that heat off of you if you can. One last thing on the handlebars is obviously the grips. I went with a Harley-Davidson branded grip here. I forget the name of it, but it definitely has more of an aggressive texture here to keep your hands on here, especially if you're somebody that rides without gloves. But even with gloves, it does give you more of a grip, so you don't feel like you're sliding off or anything like that. And there is a swell right here, so it basically fits in your palm, or at least my palms, a lot better than the standard ones. So just more comfortable on those longer rides. Definitely an upgrade I would recommend from those stock grips. And then the last thing is the license plate bracket. I went with an Amazon branded low profile one. As you can see, the stock one was basically sticking straight up and definitely did not look good and did not like kind of line up with the bike. So surprisingly, this one was off of Amazon for pretty cheap. I'll post a link down below, and everything fit perfectly. There was no drilling that I had to do. The screws and holes all lined up, and as you can see, definitely cleans up the back of the bike over that stock one. So definitely recommend this one instead of spending a bunch of money on like a name brand one. So this Amazon branded one definitely works well over those more expensive ones. And again, it's just a license plate bracket, so it's not like it's some fancy piece of material. Definitely recommend getting this one. Again, I'll post a link down below if you want to check it out. So that's pretty much all the upgrades that I have done to this bike. Again, most of them are more comfort features than anything. Again, for reference, my height's 5'10", and so that's pretty much how I have set up the bike. The mid controls feel fine for now. Again, this is an ST, so sport touring, so you got that more aggressive riding style. Really, the only thing I plan on doing in the future here that's going to cost a little bit of money is going to be the handlebars. I definitely need a rise and pull back for those, just because the longer rides, I definitely feel that in my back with that more leaning forward position. But again, trying to decide what I want to do with those. With the risers, I'm not a fan of the tall risers and the way they look with these bars. So maybe thinking about going with mini apes. I do like the way those look, but not sure how they would handle or feel on this bike. So that's something I got to do some research on, and of course a bigger cost, especially with having to run longer cables and everything like that. So something I plan on doing, but not anytime soon, something down the road. But for me right now, what I've done to this bike, definitely kind of where I want to stay and have a lot of fun riding the bike the way it is. Even my wife loves riding on the back of this thing, which I honestly didn't think she would like doing. Having a quieter exhaust, I think, helps with that as well, so that way she's not getting that loud exhaust right next to her in her ear. So having these a little bit quieter slip-ons definitely helps if you have a wife that's not doesn't like noise and loud stuff. So there you go. But if you guys did anything to your bikes, let everybody know in the comments what upgrades you've done that you like, maybe don't like or recommend. And if you guys found this video helpful but wanted to go into some more details on some of these upgrades, especially the windshields, check out these other videos right here.